Exemplary Tale of Śārdūlakarṇa. Homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus did I hear at one time. The Blessed One was dwelling at Śrāvastī, in Jetavana, Anatta Pindada's park. One morning the venerable Ānanda put on his robes, took his alms bowl, and entered the city of Śrāvastī for alms. Afterward, having walked his arms round and having had his meal, the venerable Ānanda went to a well for some water. At that moment there was an outcast girl named Prakṛti drawing water at that well. The venerable Ānanda said to the outcast girl Prakṛti, "Please give me some, sister. I would like to drink some water." The outcast girl Prakṛti replied to the venerable Ānanda, "I am an outcast girl, venerable Ānanda." "Sister, I did not ask you for your family or caste," said the venerable Ānanda. "Rather, if you can spare some water, please give me some." The outcast girl then gave some water to the venerable Ānanda. After drinking the water, the venerable Ānanda set off. Having closely and thoroughly taken in the features of the venerable Ānanda's body, face, and voice, the outcast girl Prakṛti became engrossed in shallow thoughts. Full of desire, she thought, "I wish that the noble Ānanda were my husband. My mother, who is a great holder of spells, should be able to draw in the noble Ānanda and make him my husband." The outcast girl Prakṛti then took the water jug and went to her outcast home. Upon arrival, she set the water jug aside and said to her mother, "O mother, listen. There is an ascetic named Ānanda, who is a disciple and the attendant of the great ascetic Gautama. I want to have him as my husband. Mother, you should be able to draw him in." "My child," replied her mother, "I should be able to draw in Ānanda, unless he is dead or free from desires, but King Prasenajit of Kaushala is immensely devoted, loyal, and committed to the ascetic Gautama. If he came to know of this, he would bring the entire outcast family to ruin. I have heard that the ascetic Gautama is free from desires, and one who is free from desire overcomes all." When this was said, the outcast girl Prakṛti said to her mother, "Mother, even if the ascetic Gautama is free from desires, should you not obtain the venerable Ānanda from him, I will forsake my life. If you get him, I will live." "Do not forsake your life, my child. I will obtain the ascetic Ānanda," her mother replied. Thereupon, in the middle of the courtyard, the mother of the outcast girl Prakṛti smeared cow dung on the floor and shaped it into a ritual platform. After having strewn it with daba grass, she set it on fire, and she threw 108 arka flowers into the fire, one by one, while reciting mantras. This was the formula: Amale vimale kunkume sumane Yena bado si vidyut ichaya devu vashati vijotati gajati vismayam maharajasya sama biva dayitum devebyo mamoshebyo gandavebya shikigraha deva vishikigraha deva ananda shagamanaya Kramanaya Juhomi Svaha. At that moment, the venerable Ānanda's mind became entranced, and he left the monastery and walked to the home of the outcast. When the outcast mother saw the venerable Ānanda coming from afar, she said to her daughter Prakṛti, "My child, that is the ascetic Ānanda who is coming. Go and prepare a bed." Thrilled, elated, and overjoyed, the outcast girl Prakṛti set about preparing a bed for the venerable Ānanda. When the venerable Ānanda had reached the outcast house, he approached the ritual platform and stood by its side. He then cried out and wept. I find myself in this dreadful predicament, and now the Blessed One does not take notice of me. At that very moment, however, the Blessed One took notice of the venerable Ānanda, and having taken notice of him, he immediately vanquished the mantras of the outcast with the mantras of a perfectly awakened one. This was the formula: Sthitya Achyuti Aniti Śrāvastī Sava Pranibhya Sara Prasanam Nirdosham Prashantam Savato Bhyayam Itayo Yatra Shamanti Bhayani Chalitani Chatam Vaideva Namasyanti Savasidaścha Yogina Etena Satya Vakyena Śrāvastī Anandaya Bhikshave. Then, once the spell of the outcast had been broken, the venerable Ānanda left the house of the outcasts and began to walk back to his monastery. The outcast girl Prakṛti saw this, and as she watched the venerable Ānanda going back, she said to her mother, "Mother, this ascetic Ānanda is going back." "Surely, my child," said her mother, "the ascetic Gautama must have noticed him and counted my mantras." "But mother," replied Prakṛti, "do we not have mantras more powerful than those of the ascetic Gautama?" "My child," the mother replied, "we do not have mantras more powerful than those of the ascetic Gautama. Even mantras that are overpowering to the entire world, my child, are all vanquished by the ascetic Gautama when he wishes, but the world does not have the power to counter the mantras of the ascetic Gautama. In this way, the mantras of the ascetic Gautama are more powerful." The venerable Ānanda then arrived at where the Blessed One was. Having approached him, he venerated the Blessed One's feet with his head and stood to one side. As the venerable Ānanda stood there, the Blessed One said to him, "Take up this 6-syllable formula, Ānanda, and retain, recite, and master it for the benefit and welfare of yourself, and for the benefit and welfare of monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen. Ānanda, this 6-syllable formula has been spoken by the 6 Tathāgata, Arhat, perfectly awakened ones of the past, as well as by the 4 great kings, by Shakra, Lord of the gods, and by Brahma, Lord of this Saha world. And now it is spoken by me, Shakyamuni, the perfectly awakened one. You should therefore retain, recite, and master it. It is as follows: Andare pandare keyure dihaste saragrive bandumati dara visha chili mili satimne yata sambhakte golapati kandavilaya. Ānanda, this 6-syllable formula offers protection and blessing, such that if one is to be executed, one will be released with the strike of a rod. If one is to be struck with a rod, one will be released with the blow of a fist. And if one is to be struck with the fist, one will be released with a reprimand. Ānanda, I do not see anything in this world with its gods, its Mara and its Brahma, among the multitudes with their ascetics and Brahmins, with their groups of gods, humans and asuras, that can overpower when one is protected by this 6-syllable formula, when one is blessed with a protective thread tied around one's arm, except for the maturation of past karma. With the passing of that night, the outcast girl Prakṛti washed herself, put on new clothes, and adorned herself with a pearl necklace. She then went to the city of Śrāvastī, where she stood by the city gate and waited for the venerable Ānanda to come, thinking, "The monk Ānanda will certainly be coming by this road." In the morning, the venerable Ānanda put on his robes, took his alms bowl, and entered the city of Śrāvastī for alms. The outcast girl Prakṛti saw the venerable Ānanda coming from afar, and she followed him closely from behind, going wherever he went and stopping wherever he stopped, standing silently by the door at each house where he entered for alms. The venerable Ānanda noticed the outcast girl Prakṛti following him closely from behind. Embarrassed, intimidated, uneasy, and troubled, he quickly left the city of Śrāvastī and proceeded to Jetavana. When the venerable Ānanda reached the Blessed One, he venerated the Blessed One's feet with his head and stood to one side. The venerable Ānanda then said to the Blessed One, "Blessed One, this outcast girl has been following me closely from behind, going wherever I go, stopping wherever I stop. At each house I enter for alms, she stands silently by the door. Help me, Blessed One. Help me, well-gone one." On hearing this, the Blessed One said to the venerable Ānanda, "Do not be afraid, do not be afraid." The Blessed One then asked the outcast girl Prakṛti, "Prakṛti, is it that you wish to be married to the monk Ānanda?" "Venerable Sir, it is my wish," she replied. The Blessed One said, "Prakṛti, have your parents given you permission regarding the monk Ānanda?" "They have given their permission, Blessed One. They have given their permission, well-gone one." "Then you must have them give their permission in my presence." In obeisance to the Blessed One, the outcast girl Prakṛti venerated the Blessed One's feet with her head, circumambulated him 3 times, and took her leave of him, setting off to her parents. When she reached her parents, she venerated their feet with her head, stood to one side, and said to her parents, "Mother, Father, please grant me to Ānanda in the presence of the ascetic Gautama." At this, her parents went with the outcast girl Prakṛti to where the Blessed One was. Having approached him, they venerated the Blessed One's feet with their heads, and sat down to one side. The outcast girl Prakṛti then venerated the Blessed One's feet with her head, and stood to one side. She said to the Blessed One, "These, Blessed One, are my parents who have come." Thereupon the Blessed One asked the parents of the outcast girl Prakṛti, "Have you given your daughter Prakṛti permission regarding the monk Ānanda?" "We have given our permission, Blessed One. We have given our permission, well-gone one." "Then you may return to your home." At this, the parents of the outcast girl Prakṛti venerated the Blessed One's feet with their heads, circumambulated him 3 times, and took their leave of him. Once he knew that the parents of the outcast girl Prakṛti had left, the Blessed One asked the outcast girl Prakṛti, "Prakṛti, do you want to be with the monk Ānanda?" "I want to be with him, Blessed One. I want to be with him, well-gone one." "If so, Prakṛti, then you should adopt the attire of the monk Ānanda." "I will adopt it, Blessed One. I will adopt it, well-gone one. Please allow me to go forth, Blessed One. Please allow me to go forth, well-gone one." Then the Blessed One said to the outcast girl Prakṛti, "Come, nun, live the spiritual life." When this was said, the outcast girl Prakṛti had her hair shaven off and became clad in yellow ochre robes by the Blessed One. When he had thus turned the outcast girl Prakṛti into a nun and allowed her to go forth, the Blessed One instructed, encouraged, uplifted, and inspired her with a dharmic talk. It was a talk to be heard as a remedy for sentient beings who have been stuck in samsara for a long time. That is, a talk about generosity, a talk about ethical conduct, a talk about the heavens, about the dangers associated with sense pleasures, about finding release, about the perils, about the mental afflictions, defilement and purification, and about the factors pertaining to awakening. These were the things that the Blessed One fully explained to the nun Prakṛti. Instructed, encouraged, uplifted, and inspired with a dharmic talk by the Blessed One, the nun Prakṛti had a mind that was elated, propitious, rejoicing, without hindrances, upright, and without rigidity, by which she became ready to understand the teaching of the Dharma. When the Blessed One knew that the nun Prakriti had a mind that was elated, propitious, rejoicing, without hindrances and without rigidity, by which she was ready and able to understand the most elevated Dharma teaching, the Blessed One expounded it in full to the nun Prakriti, that most elevated Dharma teaching of the Blessed Buddhas on penetrating the four truths of the Noble Ones, that is to say, suffering, its origin, cessation, and the way. Then, while sitting there on her seat, the nun Prakriti directly realized the four truths of the Noble Ones, that is, suffering, its origin, cessation, and the way. Just as when a spotless cloth fit for dyeing is put in liquid dye, it completely absorbs the dye, the nun Prakriti, while sitting there on her seat, directly realized the four truths of the Noble Ones, that is, suffering, its origin, cessation, and the way. When the nun Prakriti had thus seen the Dharma, attained the Dharma, realized the Dharma, become unshakable in the Dharma, understood the Dharma as conclusive, turned toward the attainment of the goal, surmounted all doubt, overcome all uncertainty, had no more queries, attained complete confidence, and become one who pursues the Dharma in the teacher's instruction, no longer relying on or being led by others, becoming thoroughbred in the teachings, she fell at the Blessed One's feet and said to the Blessed One, "I have transgressed, Blessed One. I have transgressed, Well-Gone One. Like a fool, like an idiot, like a stupid person, like an unskillful person, I had bad judgment and acted on the wish to have the monk Ānanda as my husband. Venerable Sir, I thus see my transgression as a transgression. Seeing this transgression as a transgression, I confess this transgression. I admit that this transgression was a transgression. I am committed to restraint from transgression. Hence, may the Blessed One know of that transgression of mine as a transgression. May he be accepting of it out of compassion." The Blessed One said, "As you stand firmly in refraining from transgression, Prakriti, you have understood your transgression as a transgression, saying that, like a fool, like an idiot, like a stupid person, like an unskillful person, you had bad judgment, and acted on the wish to have the monk Ānanda as your husband. Since you know your transgression, see your transgression, and are committed to restraint from transgression, I shall be accepting of your transgression as a transgression. Being henceforth committed to restraint, you should expect a growth of wholesome qualities, not a loss." Having been commended and instructed by the Blessed One, the nun Prakriti withdrew to a solitary place, and vigilantly, ardently, mindfully, fully aware and effortfully dwelled in seclusion. On account of having her hair shaven off, having donned the yellow ochre robes, and having gone forth with perfect faith from home to homelessness, the young lady directly knew, realized, and attained by herself in this lifetime the conclusion of the unsurpassable sublime life. She proclaimed, "Birth has come to an end for me. The sublime life has been lived. What was to be done has been done, and I know there is no more cyclic existence from here." Now the Brahmins and householders of Śrāvastī came to hear that an outcast girl had gone forth under the Blessed One. Hearing of this, they condemned it, saying, "How could an outcast girl live the perfect life of monks? How could she live the perfect life of nuns, devoted laymen, and devoted laywomen? How could an outcast girl enter the communities of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, householders, and landlords?" Moreover, King Prasenajit of Kaushala came to hear that an outcast had gone forth under the Blessed One. Hearing of this, he also condemned it, saying, "How could an outcast girl live the perfect life of monks? How could she live the perfect life of nuns, devoted laymen, and devoted laywomen? How could she enter the communities of brahmins, kshatriyas, householders, and landlords?" Reflecting on this, he had a fine carriage yoked. After mounting this fine carriage, he departed from Śrāvastī, accompanied by a large group of brahmins and householders from Śrāvastī. As he approached Jetavana, Anathapindada's park, he went as far as the terrain allowed his carriage to go, and then dismounted from his carriage and entered Anathapindada's park by foot, accompanied by an army of foot soldiers. Having entered, he approached the Blessed One, venerated the Blessed One's feet with his head, and sat to one side. The large group of Brahmins and householders from Śrāvastī likewise venerated the Blessed One's feet with their heads, and sat down to one side. Some engaged in various kinds of pleasant and congenial conversation with the Blessed One, and then sat down to one side. Some conveyed their maternal and paternal names and lines of descent in front of the Blessed One, and then sat down to one side. Some bowed to the Blessed One with folded hands, and then sat down to one side, and some sat down to one side silently. The Blessed One knew what was on the minds of King Prasenajit of Kaushala and the large group of Brahmins and householders from Śrāvastī. Thus, in order to tell the account of the nun Prakriti's past life, he called for the nun and addressed the monks. "Monks, do you wish to hear from the Tathagata a Dharma story concerning the nun Prakriti's past life?" The monks replied to the Blessed One, "It is an appropriate time, Blessed One. It is an appropriate moment, well gone one, for the Blessed One to tell a Dharma story concerning the nun Prakriti's past life. After hearing it from the Blessed One, we will retain it. So then, monks, listen and pay attention well and carefully. I will speak." "Yes, excellent Blessed One," the monks replied in obeisance to the Blessed One. The Blessed One spoke as follows. "Previously, monks, in a past time on the riverbank of the Ganges, in an area thick with forests of atimutaka and sal trees, there lived an outcast king named Triśaṅku, together with many thousands of outcasts. Monks, that outcast king named Triśaṅku remembered the Vedas, having learned them in past lives, together with their auxiliary sciences and auxiliary subsciences, their secret teaching, their glossaries and ritual instructions, their divisions into syllables, and the fifth Veda of the epics, as well as other treatises. Proficient in words and grammar, and fully versed in worldly science, sacrificial mantras, and the characteristics of a great man, without any doubts, he gave expositions according to the Dharma, and taught the Vedic observances as they were traditionally passed down. Moreover, that king Triśaṅku had a son, a young prince named Śārdūlakarṇa, who was endowed with all good qualities in bodily appearance, family lineage, ethical conduct and virtue, and was handsome, good-looking, and pleasing to behold, having a supremely resplendent excellence of complexion. King Triśaṅku taught the prince Śārdūlakarṇa the Vedas as he had learned them in past lives, with their auxiliary sciences and auxiliary subsciences, their secret teaching, their glossaries and ritual instructions, their divisions into syllables, the fifth Veda of the epics, and other treatises, as well as expositions according to the Dharma and the Vedic observances. Then King Triśaṅku thought, "This son of mine, the Prince Śārdūlakarṇa, is perfectly endowed in bodily appearance, family lineage, ethical conduct, and virtue. Being endowed with all good qualities, he is handsome, good-looking, and pleasing to behold, having a supremely resplendent excellence of complexion. Having practiced the observances and having learned the mantras, he has mastered the Vedas. This is the time when I should fulfill the duty of getting him married. So now where do I find for my son Śrāvastī a suitable wife who possesses ethical conduct, virtue, and beauty? Now at that time there was a brahmin named Puṣkarasārin, who lived in the district town called Utkarta, which abounded in beings, which had grass, wood, and water, which continually yielded grains, and which had been given to him as a Brahmic gift by the king Agnidatta. The Brahmin Puṣkarasārin was completely pure by both his maternal and his paternal sides, having an undisturbed family lineage, and being able to state the caste and line of descent of his foremothers and forefathers up to 7 generations. On account of that, he was a teacher who, as a holder of the mantras, had mastered the 3 Vedas with their auxiliary sciences and sub-sciences, their secret teaching, their glossaries and ritual instructions, their divisions into syllables, and the 5th Veda of the epics, and he was proficient in words and grammar, and fully versed in worldly science, sacrificial mantras, and the characteristics of a great man. The Brahmin Puṣkarasārin had a daughter, a young maiden named Prakṛti, who was perfectly endowed in bodily appearance, family lineage, ethical conduct, and virtue. Being endowed with all good qualities, she was beautiful, good-looking, and pleasing to behold, having a supremely resplendent excellence of complexion. Then the outcast king Triśaṅku thought, "To the northeast there is a district town called Utkarta, where there lives a Brahmin named Puṣkarasārin. He is perfectly endowed both by his maternal and his paternal sides, and is fully versed in the 3 Vedas and the scriptures. He enjoys ownership over the district town called Utkarta, which abounds in beings, which has grass, wood, and water, which continually yields grains, and which has been given to him as a Brahmic gift by the king Agnidatta. That Brahmin Puṣkarasārin has a daughter, a young maiden named Prakṛti, who is perfectly endowed in bodily appearance, family lineage, and ethical conduct, and who, endowed with all good qualities, is beautiful, good-looking, and pleasing to behold, having a supremely resplendent excellence of complexion. Possessing ethical conduct and virtue, she should be a suitable wife for my son Śrāvastī. King Triśaṅku thought about this matter all night, and when the night had passed, at daybreak he mounted his fully white mare-drawn chariot, and accompanied by a large group of outcast officials, left the outcast palace and set off north for the district town of Utkarta. King Triśaṅku arrived at a park called Sumanaska to the northeast of Utkarta, which, being covered by various kinds of trees, with various kinds of trees blooming and various kinds of birds singing, was delightful like the Nandana grove of the gods. There he stayed, waiting for the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin, knowing the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin will come to teach mantras to Brahmin youths here. After the passing of that night, the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin had also mounted a fully white, mare-drawn chariot, and accompanied by a group of students consisting of 500 Brahmin youths, set out from Utkarta to teach mantras to the young Brahmins. The outcast king Triśaṅku saw the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin coming from afar, ablaze with radiance like a rising sun, like a flaring sacrificial fire, like an offering ritual accompanied by scores of Brahmins, like Chakra accompanied by scores of gods, like the Himalaya range accompanied by its flora, like the ocean accompanied by jewels, like the moon accompanied by the constellations of stars, like Vaishravana accompanied by hosts of yakshas, and like Brahma accompanied by groups of gods and sages. Seeing him, he went to meet him in accordance with propriety, and said, "Dear Puṣkarasārin, welcome. There is a matter I wish to discuss with you. Please listen." Thus addressed, the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin said to the outcast king Triśaṅku, "No, dear Triśaṅku, it is not appropriate for you to use dear with a Brahmin." "Dear Puṣkarasārin, I can use dear." "While it is appropriate for me to use it, it is not appropriate for you to do so." "But, dear Puṣkarasārin, a man has 4 duties that have been undertaken since bygone times: those for the sake of oneself, those for the sake of someone else, those for the sake of one's kin, and those for the sake of all beings in totality. This is a very important matter that I wish to discuss with you. Please listen. Please grant your daughter Prakṛti as wife for my son Śrāvastī. I will bestow on you whatever dowry you have in mind." Hearing these words from the outcast king Triśaṅku, the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin was deeply offended, upset, furious, and not at all pleased. Full of anger, hostility, and resentment, he knit his brow into a 3-pointed frown, gasped and panted while rolling his eyes, and having become red like a mongoose, said to the outcast king Triśaṅku, "Fie on you, you vulgar fellow, you outcast! This is not appropriate speech for a dog-cooking one. You who are lowly and born from an outcast womb, wish to insult a Brahmin versed in the Vedas. O evil-minded one! You are not aware of your nature, and you think much of yourself. Do not try to put a mustard seed on the tip of a hair. Do not make for any aggravation. Do not solicit the unsolicitable. Do not try to catch the wind with a noose. Gold never becomes ashes, deluded one. How is the distinction between bright and dark not perceived? For you are born from an outcast womb, whereas I am a twice-born. Deluded one, how could you, as a lowly one, seek to forge ties with someone superior? You are born from an outcast womb, whereas I am born as a twice-born, and a superior one does not wish to forge ties with someone inferior. For the superior twice-born establish matrimonial ties with the superior, those who are endowed with Vedic law and completely pure in conduct, who are entirely impeccable by caste, who have attained mastery in the mantras, who are teachers and holders of the mantras, who are fully versed in the 3 Vedas. Brahmins who have learned the Vedas with their glossaries and ritual instructions, it is with such ones that the twice-born establish matrimonial ties here. For a superior one does not wish to forge ties with the inferior. You solicit the unsolicitable. It is to catch the wind with a noose that you wish to establish matrimonial ties with us. A miserable one, the lowest of persons, is repulsive to the entire world. Go, you inferior fellow, quick. Why do you thus disrespect us? Outcasts go with outcasts, cemetery keepers with cemetery keepers. Here a caste only establishes matrimonial ties with its caste. Brahmins with Brahmins, Kshatriyas with Kshatriyas, Vaishyas with Vaishyas, and Shudras with Shudras. Like go with like. They get married to each other. Outcasts definitely do not establish matrimonial ties with Brahmins. You are of the lowest of all births, despised by all the classes. How could you, as a lowly one, seek to forge ties with the superior? Hearing these words from the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin, the outcast king Triśaṅku replied, While a distinction is perceived between ashes and gold, there is really no distinction between a Brahmin and one of another caste. While a distinction is perceived between bright and dark, there is really no distinction between a Brahmin and one of another caste. Brahmins did not spring forth from the sky or the wind, nor are they born bursting from the earth like fire from rubbing fire sticks. Brahmins are born from a womb, and outcasts too are born from a womb. So what reason do you really see for superiority or inferiority? And just as it is with other births, a Brahmin too, when he is discarded at death, is likewise held to be impure and repulsive. What then is the difference between them? Whatever sinful action there is that is wicked and evil, it has been propounded by Brahmins in order to oppress beings. So it is that actions for the ancestors are propounded by Brahmins, and while committing terrible deeds, the twice-born say, "I am virtuous." It has been contrived by Brahmins wanting to eat meat, that goats and sheep sacrificed with mantras go to heaven. If this is the way to heaven, then why would these Brahmins not sacrifice with mantras themselves or their kin? Why would these twice-born not sacrifice their mothers and fathers, their brothers and sisters, their sons, daughters, and wives? Having been sacrificed with mantras, their friends, relatives, and companions, even their fellow citizens, would all be going to heaven. Having offered them through sacrificial rituals, they would all be going to the good place. So then, what is the use of sacrificed animals? Why would you not sacrifice yourself? Neither through sacrifice nor through mantras do goats and sheep go to heaven. For this is not the way to heaven. This is called wrong sacrifice. This device, however, was thought up by Brahmins with vicious minds. The sacrifice of animals was contrived by those who want to eat meat. Let me describe something else that Brahmins have contrived. It is declared that for Brahmins there are 4 kinds of downfalls: stealing gold, drinking alcohol, violating the Guru's wife, and murdering a Brahmin. These are the 4 downfalls for Brahmins. Stealing gold is to be avoided, but any other theft is not. When a Brahmin steals gold, he thereby becomes a non-Brahmin. Liquor should not be had, but any other drink as one likes. When a Brahmin drinks liquor, he thereby becomes a non-Brahmin. The Guru's wife should not be gone to, but anyone else's wife as one likes. When a Brahmin goes to his Guru's wife, he thereby becomes a non-Brahmin. One should not kill a single Brahmin, but any number of other people may be killed. When a Brahmin kills a Brahmin, he thereby becomes a non-Brahmin. Thus, these are said to be the 4 kinds of downfalls for Brahmins, due to which they become non-Brahmins. It is held that anything else is not a downfall. When one commits any one of the 4, one becomes a non-Brahmin. Within a congregation of Brahmins, one will not receive any courtesy, and one will not be worthy of a seat and water, nor will anyone respectfully stand up. However, Brahmins have seen a remedy for one who has fallen. After having taken up an observance, he may reach Brahminhood again. For an entire 12 years, he should wear a donkey skin, carry upright a Khatvanga staff, and eat from the skull of the deceased. After having taken up this observance, resolutely and uninterruptedly, then at the completion of the 12th year, he may reach Brahminhood again. Thus a remedy was seen by Brahmins who practice austerities, who walk the wrong path, deluded, who do not see what the remedy is. So I say this to you, Brahmin, that it is a mere commonplace notion of people to speak of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra. Recognizing that all this is one and the same, please grant the Brahmin maiden Prakṛti as wife for my son Śrāvastī. I will bestow on you whatever dowry you have in mind." Hearing these words from the outcast king Triśaṅku, the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin was deeply offended, upset, furious, and not at all pleased. Full of anger, hostility, and resentment about it, he knit his brow into a three-pointed frown, gasped and panted while rolling his eyes, and having become red like a mongoose, said to the outcast king Triśaṅku, "Not having looked at this properly, inferior fellow, you have formed such a notion that there is only one kind in this world, common to all without any distinctions. How could you of the dog-cooking caste, having been born from a lowly womb, wish to completely defeat a Brahmin who is fully versed in the Vedas? Kings, O inferior fellow, are those who know how to distinguish properly, whether in regard to the law of the country, the law of the city, the law of the village, the law of the district, the law of dowries, the law of inviting for marriage, or the law of marriage, or in regard to past karma. These four, O inferior fellow, are the caste categories: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. According to their marriage laws, Brahmins may have four kinds of wives: Brahmin women, Kshatriya women, Vaishya women, and Shudra women. Kshatriyas may have three kinds of wives: Kshatriya women, Vaishya women, and Shudra women. Vaishyas may have two kinds of wives: Vaishya women and Shudra women. Shudras, however, may have one kind of wives: only Shudra women. Thus, O inferior fellow, Brahmins have four kinds of sons: those born from Brahmin women, Kshatriya women, Vaishya women, or Shudra women. Kshatriyas have three kinds of sons: those born from Kshatriya women, Vaishya women, or Shudra women. Vaishyas have two kinds of sons: those born from Vaishya women or Shudra women. Shudras, however, have only one kind of sons: those born from Shudra women. The Brahmins, O inferior fellow, are sons of Brahma. They are the sons born from his mouth. Kshatriyas are born from his chest and arms, Vaishyas from his waist, and Shudras from his legs and feet. It was by Brahma, O inferior fellow, that this world and all its beings were created. We are his foremost sons. Next come the Kshatriyas. Vaishyas are the third caste category, and the fourth are called Shudras. You, O inferior fellow, do not appear even in the fourth caste. I am in the highest caste, the superior caste, the supreme caste, the preeminent caste. And you actually expect a matrimonial connection? Get lost, you inferior fellow, quickly. Do not insult me further." Hearing these words from the Brahmin Puṣkarasārin, the outcast king Triśaṅku said, "Listen here, Brahmin, to what I have to say. It is said that it was by Brahma that this world and all its beings were created. And it is said, 'We are his foremost sons.' Next come the Kshatriyas. Vaishyas are the third caste category, and the fourth are called Shudras. Yet human beings all have feet, legs, hands, flesh, torsos, and backs. Since there is no distinction in any part of the body, the four caste categories do not exist. When there is any prominent distinction, then tell me about it as it is endorsed by you. But when there is no prominent distinction, then the four caste categories do not exist. It is indeed just like childish boys who are playing on the road. As they squish together mud pies, they give them their own names. This is milk, this is curd, This is meat, this is ghee. But it is not the case that by children's speech mud pies are in fact food. It is just so with the 4 caste categories that you speak about, O Brahmin. There is no logical sense to the naming of mud pies. Not by hair, not by ears, not by head, not by eyes, not by mouth, not by nose, not by neck, not by arms, not by chest, not by sides, not by back, not by stomach, not by thighs, not by calves, not by hands, feet, or nails, not by voice, not by complexion, not by any body parts, nor by copulation, is there any marked distinction among all human beings. Just as among the other castes each birth is due to the sex organs, it being the universal underlying cause, why then do you think in terms of castes? And when human beings all have a head, a skeleton, skin, sense organs, and stomachs, since there is no distinction by a single body part, it is not sensible to designate 4 caste categories. When there is any prominent distinction, then tell me about it as it is endorsed by you. But when there is no prominent distinction here, it is not sensible to designate 4 caste categories. If this is indeed a fallacy, then whatever is designated by you regarding the underlying basis is not sensible. But listening to me, good sir, you must follow through what I think on this. You must listen to what is being said. I will speak to you about what is sensible in this, what is consistent or inconsistent, as it is being enjoined. When there is a fallacy that is not sensible, I will tell you about it in further response. But listening to me, good sir, you must follow it through. Preeminent are human beings for whom the Dharma is sovereign. If inference is also authoritative to you, Brahmin, then when you say that Brahma is one, it would follow that his creatures are all of the same kind. We are of the same kind when you say that it is by Brahma that this world and all its beings were created. And if, Brahmin, you take this as authoritative, then it is not sensible, Brahmin, for you to speak of 4 caste categories, Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. However, Brahmin, if what I am saying is wrong, then, Brahmin, we would have to concurrently discern a marked difference within humankind. That is, we would have to discern a marked difference in heads, mouths, eyes, ears, noses, brows, colours, bodily forms, bodily shapes, bodily appearances, organs of birth, food, and modes of birth. For instance, dear Puṣkarasārin, one discerns a marked difference between cows, horses, donkeys, dogs, camels, deer, birds, goats, and sheep, and between those born from eggs, those born from wombs, those born from heat and moisture, and those born spontaneously. That is to say, one discerns a marked difference in feet, in mouths, in colours, in bodily shapes, in food, and in organs of birth and modes of birth. Yet, between the 4 caste categories, no such marked difference is discerned. Therefore, all these are one and the same. Also, Brahmin, among those sapwood trees, one discerns a marked difference between the mango, the black plum, the date, the jackfruit, the pomegranate, the persimmon, the grape, the citron, the wood apple, the candle nut, the coconut, the tinisha, the karanja, and so on. That is to say, one discerns a marked difference in roots, in trunks, in bark, in sapwood, in heartwood, in leaves, in flowers, and in fruits. Yet between the 4 caste categories, no such marked difference is discerned. Likewise, Brahmin, among those dry land trees, one discerns a marked difference between the sal tree, the tamala tree, the naktamala tree, the karnikara tree, the saptapana tree, the Shirisa tree, the Kovidara tree, the Syandana tree, the sandalwood tree, the Shimshapa tree, the Eranda tree, the Kadira tree, and so on. That is to say, one discerns a marked difference in roots, in trunks, in bark, in sapwood, in heartwood, in leaves, in flowers, and in fruits. Yet, between the 4 caste categories, no such marked difference is discerned. Likewise, dear Puṣkarasārin, among those milk-secreting trees, one discerns a marked difference between the Udumbara tree, the Plaksha tree, the Pipal tree, the Banyan tree, the Valguka tree, and so on. That is to say, one discerns a marked difference in roots, in trunks, in bark, in sapwood, in heartwood, in leaves, in flowers, and in fruits. Yet between the 4 caste categories, no such marked differences is discerned. Likewise, dear Puṣkarasārin, also among those trees with medicinal fruits, one discovers a marked difference between the gooseberry tree, the haritaki tree, the vibhitaki tree, and the parasaka tree, and also between other kinds of medicinal plants, herbs, and trees that grow in the countryside and in the mountains. That is to say, one discerns a marked difference in roots, in trunks, in sapwood, in heartwood, in leaves, in flowers, and in fruits. Yet, between the 4 caste categories, no such marked difference is discerned. Likewise, Brahmin, among flower-bearing trees that grow on dry land, one discerns a marked difference between the Atimuktata tree, the Kampaka tree, the Patala tree, the Sumana tree, the Vashika tree, the Danuskarika tree, and so on. That is to say, one discerns a marked difference in form, in colour, in fragrance, and in shape. Yet between the 4 caste categories, no such marked difference is observed. Likewise, Brahmin, among flowers that grow in water, one discerns a marked difference between the lotus, the blue water lily, the white water lily, the nicely fragrant water lily, the softly fragrant water lily, and so on. That is to say, one discerns a marked difference in form, in colour, in fragrance, and in shape. Yet between the 4 caste categories, no such marked difference is discerned. Puṣkarasārin, so as to say, those are Brahmins, those are Kshatriyas, those are Vaishyas, and those are Shudras. Therefore, all these are one and the same. I will speak to you about something else as it is conceived by Brahmins. His head is the starry firmament, the vault of the sky is his belly, the mountains are his thighs, the earth's surface his feet, the sun and the moon his eyes, the grasses and trees his body hair. It is said the rains are his tears, the rivers are his urine, and the oceans are his excrements. Such is Brahma, Lord of creatures. You must examine it by its intrinsic characteristic, Brahmin. When Brahmins originate from Brahma, then, by the same reason, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras also originate from Brahma. If being reborn were in reality like this, there would be a caste-based distinction. If Brahmins proceed to the world of Brahma, and the 3 other castes do not go to heaven, there would thus be a caste-based distinction. If it is not so, then the 4 caste categories do not exist. Because one who belongs to the 4th caste category goes to heaven by having done good actions, as it is with the praised austerities of sages, there is nothing distinctive about the twice-born. If there were just one Brahmin here who had 2 tongues and 4 ears, 4 horns, many legs, and 2 heads, there would thus be a caste-based distinction. Killing others while being full of desire, thus causing harm in all sorts of ways, and at the same time condemning people's actions, these are the unvirtuous deeds of Brahmins. fighting, arguing, and constantly quarrelling, Brahmins came up with sacrificing cows, instilling fear with utter Vedic ritual. Brahmins made up these mantras. Wishing to do evil, deceiving many people, being dishonest, cunning, and crafty, thus thinking about disadvantaging others, when would they thereby go to heaven? Those Brahmins of intense austerities, fully disciplined, who are always committed to vows and ethical conduct, who are non-violent and devoted to maintaining restraint. It is those Brahmins who go to the city of Brahma. One is the same in having bones and flesh, in having nails, and in having skin, sorrow, happiness, urine, and excrements. Since there is no distinction by the 5 sense faculties, these 4 caste categories do not exist. Brahmin, it is like a man who had 4 sons, and gave them the names Nandaka, he who has delight, Jivaka, he who has life, Ashoka, he who has no sorrow, and Shatayus, he who has a lifespan of 100. And then, dear Puṣkarasārin, that man would think of his cherished sons, that he who is called Nandaka delights, he who is called Jivaka lives, he who is called Ashoka has no sorrow, and he who is called Shatayus lives 100 years. It is by name, Brahmin, that a difference is discerned between them, not by birth. Why is this? Because, Brahmin, a son is born to his father. For that reason, there is this explanation. The mother being the vessel, a son is of the father. One is he by whom one is born. If you recognize this to be the case, then nowhere are they others. Examine it rightly, Brahmin. Who here is a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Sudra? Among all, there are people with only one eye, people with hunched backs, and those with epilepsy. Among each there are those with leprosy and those with vitiligo, those who are fair-skinned and those who are dark-skinned. Those people are established as having marrow, nails, skin, torsos, stomachs, and faces by their own actions. Thus, in transmigration, Brahmin, there is no distinction. What distinction is there based on birth? Since there is no distinguishing by birth, the 4 caste categories do not at all exist. Therefore, I say to you, Brahmin, that it is a mere commonplace notion of people to speak of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or outcaste. This is one. All this is one and the same. So please grant your daughter Prakṛti as wife for my son Śrāvastī. I will bestow on you whatever dowry you may have in mind.